So basically we've already covered the world of Riot's MMO, we've covered the races and class, and now what remains? Yeah, 2 more things remain. One is professions, as we covered in the previous video. Yeah, the alchemists are going to be a profession, at least that's my guess. And now the bosses. The question is, the bosses are we talking about dungeons or raids? So let's see what we have in here.
Well, hello there. It seems like people really enjoy it when I talk about things covered in deep layers of copium. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think we're riding on copium that much. So far, I have not made up a single thing, I am simply presenting things that already exist.
Yep.
And as my videos got traction, I started getting some valuable feedback. So before we begin today's video, let's have a look at some of the things you just had to point out. For those of you who believe we are starting unhealthy hype, it's fine. As long as we all understand that we are dealing with hypotheticals, and that
True, the hype is going to kill it. Yeah, the hype is, I imagine the hype for this game is going to be the same shit that's going to have that happened to Cyberpunk. Everyone was hyped for Cyberpunk. Problem with Cyberpunk was that they were pressured by the publishers. The CD Projekt Red got pressured by fucking investors to publish the game, even though the developer said, brother, we cannot do that shit. It's still too soon. And basically, yeah, they were right. When they released the game still needed another year or 2 of development. Right now, like, brother, right now, you can purchase a Cyberpunk, you can download it, bro. It's a fucking good game right now. Right now, it's a fucking good game, but everything died because it was way too hyped. And the game was crashing because it wasn't ready. So knowing Riot, with the 200 years of gaming experience, I feel like we're gonna be Gucci here.
That we will all be bold by the time it comes out. I also got to interview the person who wrote the upcoming massive League of Legends novel, who was confirmed to now be working on the MMO. And he told me that yes, my videos are being passed among the developers, so you can stop tagging them on Twitter now.
That's kind of giga chat the developers see the videos, you know? Because the developers know what the community wants to see and what the community doesn't want to see. Because these videos are getting attraction by the people who will definitely play the game. If you are not playing the game, you're not watching the game, you're not watching the video, you know? In the long term, yeah, once the game will get published, you'll get new players that never heard of the game, don't know what's going on, but the shit is already tested by the players who want to see this game. And safe to say, that's a perfect mix of the MMO of the League players and the MMO players. So basically my example in here, yeah, we're playing LoL on free time, we're playing a bit of a League, and we're playing a bit of Warcraft, yeah, and I'm kind of AFK, yeah, classic, kind of AFK. Well, it is what it is, you know, it is what it is. So yeah, let's just say this game has to be good.
Also, that novel is insanely good. It's Game of Thrones in League of Legends. I am excited for the potential lore of the MMO. Next, yeah, I am wearing my slippers out of my own volition. Yes, shamans can shapeshift in this universe, just like druids. And yes, Riot confirmed that Legends of Runeterra, which is the card game based on League of Legends, is a big inspiration when it comes to the world building. In case you're wondering what this is about, all the art I am showing you comes from Legends of Runeterra. A game that secretly acts as a massive archive of art that reveals this universe. Anyway, after covering the world and all the races and classes the lore supports, we can now dive into the potential endgame bosses of this MMO. Now I know what you're thinking.
Mommy Lysandra will not be a boss, change my fucking mind, she's a good guy, yeah? Even though she is evil, we have to understand that the moment we remove Lysandra, yeah, we'll kill her as a boss, the fucking Watchers come into the universe and just snap it, you know? Like, they just go full Thanos on us. Nah.
This game isn't even in the playtesting phase, how can we talk about the raids? Well, you see, that's because Riot was probably thinking ahead of time.
True.
And they started a bit of a meme in the lore community. They gave this universe way too many world-ending threats.
True.
The downside of this is that, yeah, there was a time when we didn't know which world-ending threat was the real world-ending threat. It was a battle between who's the biggest evil. But the benefits are obvious. You have a lot of meaningful enemies that you can remove before you start limiting your storytelling. And in fact, many of these big storylines are written with all the back doors open, so that in the future they can utilize them for an event in League of Legends, or it is stories that were left open purposefully for the MMO.
Okay.
And that's what this video is going to be about. Originally, I wanted to show you 10 storylines that were left open and which would lead into raids. But if
Mordekaiser? Lissandra? Let's assume Lissandra. Yeah, but there's no way we're killing Lissandra in the game. And that boss, she survives. She somehow survives and she keeps the Watchers at bay. The Void. Straight up the Void. Aatrox? Yeah. Darkin. Darkin for sure. I imagine Mount Targon is going to be. Yeah, Mount Targon for sure. Then 6. Viego? Yeah, Viego for sure. The Return of the Ruination. Okay, that's 6. We need 4 more. You know, we need 4 more. Galio? No, Galio is Gucci. Yeah, Galio is Gucci. Unless Galio goes evil. Xerath? Yeah, evil mage in Shurima. Why not?
if you look at the length of this video, yeah, I cut it down to only 7.
Okay,
so
fair enough,
without further ado, let's get on it.
Sion, yeah, we forgot Sion.
Since we are essentially talking about the world of League of Legends, especially if you have seen our last 2 MMO videos, it goes without saying that this world has material for hundreds of instances.
More.
This means that it's really up to Riot to cherry pick which ones they want to do. And since in this video I am only going to mention 7 of these, it is highly likely I am not going to mention the one that you would like to see. But if you feel strong about your own idea about a dungeon, feel free to comment about it below.
Okay, what do we want to see the most, eh? Which boss? I'd say Aatrox. I'd say Aatrox would be the most badass, the most endgame, you know? Maybe even Kindred, but if you kill Kindred, you kill Death. You kill the aspect of Death, then there's not much, no? Brazil, Mordekaiser. Okay. Imagine Asol. Ooh, brother, yeah, Asol. The entire raid of Asol. Yeah, so that's technically, I imagine that in the mountain of Targon. The entire climb would be as a dungeon. The entire climb, yeah, whatever you do, you survive the climb. At the very top, you have the bosses.
This is all valuable feedback for the developers after all. Anyway, the 7 raids I picked are based on one simple fact. Their stories and setting are perfectly fit for a raid environment.
Okay.
Be it because their stories are set up for a grand finale, or because some of these villains already have a cast of supporting bosses for the raid.
Like, yeah, Callista as a dungeon, yeah, Callista as a beginning dungeon, going into Viego, yeah, going into Viego's, into the whole Ruination thing. Ooh, that would be nice. Also, we have Hecarim, we have the entire thing of Shadow Isles, you know?
Or simply because the battles would be really cool.
True.
And because showing is better than telling, let's start with the first raid.
Brazil.
One with such a good setup, the raid essentially writes itself. The Ascension of Mount Targon.
Or that, yeah.
As you may remember, Mount Targon was created by the celestial gods to serve as a gateway to the celestial realms.
Okay.
And people decide to climb this place for a variety of reasons. Even though only about 1 in 10,000 makes it to the peak, some people try to climb the mountain because they want to be deemed worthy and become a celestial demigod, while, for example, the Demacians send their criminals here to die trying to climb the mountain. This
Based Demacia, like I swear to god, Demacia is not only racist, but they are fucking based.
This death sentence is called the Crown of Stone. And yes, of course, you can't really force the criminals to climb the mountain unless you go there with them. So most criminals just flee and start a new life elsewhere. Also, at the peak of the mountain, we can find Aurelian Soul, the Star Forger. The reason why he is here is because of the crown he is wearing. Long story short, thousands of years ago, when people noticed that Aurelian was crossing the stars, they started worshipping him, which boosted Aurelian's ego. And they crafted him a crown of celestial star metal.
I just have a question, yeah, in this whole scenario I just have a question. Aurelian Soul is a fucking giant, brother, yeah? If we're crafting him a crown, the crown has to be a fucking giant, yeah? So in order to give it to Aurelian Soul, we have to not only climb to the Mount Targon ourselves, and the stats are 1 out of 10,000 are making it, we need to carry this fucking crown with us. Yeah, I don't see how that's happening, but let's see.
Aurelian, already being quite egoistic, donned the crown.
Of course.
Only to realize it was a mind-controlling device. In reality, it was the celestial aspects who wanted to hold Aurelian's power the entire time. Now, to be fair, the aspects are using Aurelian's powers for good cause.
Oh my god, he got bamboozled, bro. He got fucking bamboozled. No wonder his win rate isn't good, you know? He's getting bamboozled everywhere.
They are using his celestial fire to purge the void from Runeterra.
Okay,
But
fair enough.
still, it is the celestial aspects who enslaved Aurelion. Anyway, Riot can make up a billion reasons why we should raid this place. Though I doubt we would be able to fight Aurelion Soul at the very peak.
Why not, brother? Why not? World of Warcraft made it. Lost Ark made it. The cosmic scale fights. Why not, brother? You know, why not? With the help of other Celestials? Sure. I see that happening. I see that happening. The entire fight we're gonna be the less level players we won't be doing shit because the main fight will be between Celestials, which is going to be helping out, you know?
You know, he is made out of space. But maybe we need to reach the peak to borrow some of his powers. Or maybe we need to kill a rampant aspect. Or maybe we just need to reach the Celestial Realm for another reason.
I would climb that mountain only to slap a Zoe. Lord knows I hate that champ.
Simply said, it is easy to make up a reason for this raid to exist.
Yep.
What's more interesting is the setting of this raid. At different levels, the mountain presents you with different enemies. So let's start with what would happen once you enter the raid. You start at the bottom of the mountain, where you are very likely to meet Chip. Chip is an already established character who shows newcomers the wonders of the mountain.
Aww.
So you follow him around until we arrive at our first boss, the living mountain itself.
So he's not a bad guy. Yeah, Chip is the good guy. Yeah. All hail Chip, yes sir.
This place has plenty of earth elementals who came alive due to the mountain's magic. Now, as I say this, don't confuse the earth elementals with Malphite. Malphite comes from Ishtal, which is quite far away from Targon. Also, he's a good guy, we don't want to fight him. But from the earth elementals who would likely protect this place.
I'm getting fucking God of War free vibes in here. Imagine story takes a turn with Ruination. For example, Ruination. Malphite becomes corrupted and we have to take him out. Holy shit, that'll be straight up God of War free gameplay. I would love to see that.
We have, for example, the Blue Sentinel, who also appears in League of Legends. But the biggest of them all is the Stonebreaker. This one would be an excellent introductory boss. You know, you're fighting the mountain itself.
Brother, the first boss have to be the easiest boss, and now we're going to fight the entire fucking mountain.
And yes, I know he's a bit too big, but you can shrink him for gameplay purposes. WoW has been notoriously known for inconsistent boss sizes, and it's fine.
True that.
Anyway, after Stonebreaker, we go further up the mountain. And suddenly, we start meeting all the lesser dragons and their worshippers. The coolest of these are the White Flame Dragons. There is also an important dragon who serves as a beacon to the other dragons, called Inviolus Vox.
Nice.
But the one that could likely become a boss would be the Eclipse Dragon. That's because this dragon is quite precious to the natives on the mountain, which would be boss number 3. You see, further up the mountain, we start encountering the tribes. There are the Lunari who hide in the shadows because they are being suppressed and they are relatively friendly, just like the Rakor. But the Solari are fanatics who blindly protect the celestial realms at any cost. Even in the cinematic you can see how they are protecting the gateway that is leading to the peak of the mountain.
Yeah, the Solari do not fuck around. That's one thing we learned, yeah? This is where the fucking Leona stereotype comes in. That thing is diving you at level 2, brother. She doesn't fuck around. Solaris have no chill.
And even though it would be cool if Riot allowed us to fight Leona herself,
Yeah.
champions in League of Legends tend to wear pretty thick plot armor. So instead, it would be cool if we could fight one of Leona's champions, the one known as Daylight Spear, Ravoon.
Okay.
Anyway, after defeating the Solari protecting the gateway, we would get near the peak. The first one to meet us here would be the Infinite Mind Splitter. This is a legendary draconic creature with a very unique ability.
Holy
It is told
shit.
that its gaze gives you so much knowledge and insight that your mind crumbles beneath it. So fighting this boss would be all about getting buffs from it, while being careful not to get too many buffs, because it would kill you. And then, after getting past the Infinite Mind Splitter, we would arrive at the last stand of the mountain.
Nice.
The Arbiter of the Peak. The last guardian standing in the center of the peak, separating mortals from the celestial realms.
Okay.
This is the creature that leads the mortals who survive the climb directly to the celestials.
So he's the good guy, we do not need to fight him, eh? Because we already made the climb. If you succeeded, he's showing you the places now.
In fact, that's what you can see here. He is guiding Tiari the Traveler to the celestial realms, where they would become the Traveler. But also, in case of emergency, the Arbiter serves as a guardian against unwanted visitors.
What do you mean unwanted visitor, brother? I made the fucking entire climb. That's the whole purpose, no? To be deemed worthy. If I manage to successfully climb, I am worthy. What are you talking about? Not wanted, guess. What do you mean, bro?
Two things could happen here. Either we fight the Arbiter to get its approval to pass into the celestial heavens.
Makes sense.
In this case, perhaps the Arbiter can test us with the lesser celestial beings.
Or
Or we simply have to destroy the Arbiter. In this case, the Arbiter would probably fight us with the golems. And finally, perhaps after beating the Arbiter, we are granted access to the celestial realms. And while, again, I doubt we would be able to fight Aurelian Soul, perhaps we could fight one of his creations that is endangering the world. We have two of them that stand out. The first creation is simply known as the Great Beyond. Aurelian Soul himself calls it his magnum opus.
Okay.
This is essentially a smaller celestial dragon created in Aurelian's image.
Basically ruined Aurelian Soul. Straight up ruined Aurelian Soul. Holy shit, he looks so badass.
So this would be like fighting Aurelian himself, except this would make sense. The one I believe might be a bit more appreciated, however,
Zoe.
would be the one known as the Scourge. This is also a celestial being created by Aurelian himself, but League of Legends players might recognize this one as
Baron.
the pure celestial version of Baron Nashor.
Yep.
It is believed that the physical Baron was born out of the pure image. So, the Scourge being the final boss would be a really cool nod towards the League of Legends community.
Now imagine Baron is a Vastaya. We know how Vastayas are made. I'm just saying, you know? I'm just saying, think about it.
See what I mean? I just made up a 7-boss raid in a heartbeat. And I skipped a lot of details just so this video wouldn't be too long. There are the celestial beasts, the demons trying to consume the heavens, the dragon roost near the peak where dragons are born, the star hounds, Esmus, the breath of the world, and so on. Designing this raid was simple because the lore and the setup is already there.
Yep,
Once
everything's
again,
ready.
I did not make anything up. All of this already exists
Imagine that being a raid boss.
in the universe. And Runeterra has a lot more places just like this one. So, let's have a look at raid number 2.
Okay.
The one raid I know as a fact people would love to see is a Darkin raid.
Yes, sir.
You can pull this off in a lot of different ways, but since the roots of the Darkin lore are in Shurima, the raid would most likely be in the deserts. Super quickly, in case you forgot, the Shuriman Empire rose to power after it started using the Sun Disk to reflect celestial magic into their soldiers, and turning them into the god warriors known as the Ascended. The Ascended were guaranteed immortality, however their minds were as fragile as they were before. After these Ascended fought the maddening void beasts released by their neighbors, they started going a little bit mad. But their minds finally snapped when their emperor died too and there was no one to give them directions. The story goes that a Darkin known as Zolani, who used to be a great healer, invented blood magic and used it to heal the other Darkin, by which she also infused them with the blood magic, with a secret plan to use the blood magic later to control them all.
That's kind of fucking 5D chess in here. Straight up 5D chess manipulations, brother. I love the story so far. Like I swear to God, the entire game will have so much fucking lore in it. It's going to be so fucking amazing.
This was Zolani's secret plan to stop the rampaging Darkin. Unfortunately, the Celestials noticed that the Darkin were very dangerous, and they started sealing them inside special weapons. The sad part is, Zolani herself was also sealed inside her blades. So since Zolani was sealed away, there was nobody to control the others. And as a nice bonus, the remaining Darkin were now empowered with blood magic. Fortunately, in the end, the Celestials sealed all the remaining Darkin inside their weapons too. But stupidly enough, the Celestials let mortals to safeguard these Darkin weapons. So of course, some people were tempted to pick up the weapons and use them for their wars.
Why would you do that?
At which point, the Darkin immediately dominated the minds and bodies of those who picked them up. So yes, these rampaging god warriors managed to free themselves. So now, let's quickly go through those who would serve as big raid bosses.
Aatrox?
Perhaps the most famous one, and as far as we know, the most powerful one, is Aatrox. After Aatrox was sealed away, his blade was picked up by a random warrior in the north. Of course, Aatrox immediately dominated the warrior's body, and since then he's been using blood magic to drain the dead around him, and make himself bigger. That's what you can see in his old cinematic. He starts small, but gets bigger the more things he kills. In fact, it got to such a point where Aatrox became the only being to ever kill a celestial god. As I mentioned in the last video, Aatrox stabbed someone wielding the power of the aspect of war so hard, the aspect of war was wiped from the stars.
Jesus.
So out of all the Darkin, Aatrox is the ultimate end boss.
And the thing is, it's already having a hard time with the Celestials. How do we deal with this guy? That would be the question.
Besides Aatrox, as mentioned, the second most important Darkin is Zolani. Now, Zolani has canonically not returned yet, but Legends of Runeterra is teasing that she might come back in the future. Also, as a fun fact, in the most recent cinematic, you can see that Talia and Kaisa arrive in front of the faceless statue of Zolani. Next, there is also Varus, a Darkin who was sealed inside a bow inside a well, and he got freed after 2 hunters fell into the well. So now, Varus's body is actually occupied by 3 souls, the 2 hunters and the Darkin. One could say he's the embodiment of 2.5 men. And there is also Kain, the one holding the scythe of a Darkin known as Rast. But as far as we know, Kain is pretty good at resisting Rast's power. So
I mean, in this scenario, you can go with the both ways, you know? Because if we can go with both ways in the League of Legends, or maybe League of Legends is going to be a League of Legends only thing, where you can become a Shadow Assassin, you can succumb to Rast and become the Darkin, you know?
I doubt Rast would be freed. Also, Kain is a League of Legends champion, so in order for Rast to come out, Kain would need to die.
Yep.
And I don't think that's possible with all the plot armor.
In the MMO, fuck it, why not? With a couple of expansions? If we're making lore, fuck it, why not? I mean, at the end, we managed to kill Gangplank. Chat, I don't know if you remember, but there was a moment where we killed fucking Gangplank. Where actually Misfortune killed Gangplank and then he got resurrected. We had an entire event for that.
But we are still not done yet. Next, from the lesser-known Darkin, there is also Horazi, who was sealed inside a small emblem. Naganeka of Zurita, who was sealed inside a giant ballista. As you can see, she looks a little bit like a chicken. And that's because it is believed that a chicken touched the ballista and the Darkin took over the chicken's body.
Don't be... That's not an amazing writing, buddy.
And lastly, there is Tarosh, who was sealed inside a massive halberd. The reason why this Darkin raid would work is because all the Darkin have a common goal. They all hate Zolani. They see her as a betrayer who was trying to control them. So
also, yeah, there's a dog Darkin incoming. Yeah, there's a Darkin dog incoming who is sealed in a dagger. So we're gonna... I'm surprised he didn't mention the thing in here, no?
in this raid, we would likely fight the other Darkin as we are trying to get to Zolani. And after we kill her, we would face Aatrox as the final boss, since all the Darkin wars began with Aatrox and Zolani starting a civil war.
The question is, why would we kill Zolani if she can control the other Darkin and she can actually control Aatrox with that idea, no? Also, if, under the assumption we're killing Zolani, Aatrox should be a good guy. Yeah, he said, thank you, you freed me. Now I will kill everyone, but you know, thank you, I will not kill you, I will kill everyone else.
Also, it turns out that Aatrox was the general of all the other Darkin. So killing Aatrox would be the perfect end to the Darkin chapter. But let's not forget that Riot is already teasing a new Darkin.
Yeah,
the
the
next
dog.
champion in League of Legends might be a dog that picked up a Darkin dagger. And if you're wondering why we would raid this place, first of all, the Darkin are pretty one-sided bad guys.
Yep.
But we could be led here by Nasus and Sivir. Nasus is an Ascended who avoided corruption, so he would be likely happy to put down his former brothers and sisters. And Sivir is holding the very first blade to be ever used to seal a Darkin. So once again, the lore is already there.
Hold on, what happened? What happened to seal a Darkin? So if we're seal, what do we mean? We're sealing the Darkin in the weapon? So what happened to this weapon? Well, what happened with the Darkin in there?
And aesthetically, we have a good idea of what it would look like too. We would start outside around the temples of Zolani, which look creepy and corrupted.
Nice.
And later we delve beneath them to where the land is tainted by blood and death. For the next raid, let's stay in Shurima. Because if there is a raid I would personally love to see, it is the raid on Narimazeth, a
What?
city that is in ruins. That's because Narimazeth was the place where Shurimans tried to build the very first Sun Disk. This first version failed, and instead of the Ascended, it was only producing the Bakai, which are broken, twisted versions of the glorious Ascended. And in the end, the entire city collapsed onto itself. After that, the Shurimans tried to build the Sun Disk again, but this time in the middle of the desert. But
I don't see that as a raid, to be honest. I see it more as a dungeon, you know? Just a leveling dungeon, that's a quick speedrun. But sure, let's see.
now, why would we want to raid these ruins?
Sivir's Blade was a device used to seal Darkins in their weapons. Oh, so they used Sivir's Blade to seal Darkins into the weapons. Okay, I see. No idea how that works, but okay. Sounds nice.
Well, that's because this city is being rebuilt by Xerath,
Oh, okay,
the
okay.
most powerful arcane mage on Runeterra.
Okay, scratch that. Not a dungeon, that's a fucking raid. If we have Xerath at the end, that's a raid.
Whose body was turned into pure arcane energy by the Sun Disk itself. Long story, shorter. When Emperor Azir was a child, he became friends with a nameless slave. And despite slaves being forbidden from having names, he called him Xerath. Throughout the years, the two became as close as brothers, studying culture and history whenever possible. Later on, despite his father hating him, Azir became his only surviving son. So unless his mother gave birth to another child, he would become the emperor anyway. Well, in secret,
Basically a little bit of Game of Thrones in here, not bad.
Xerath simply made sure she would not give birth to another child. Usually he did it by corrupting the infant in her womb. Because it turns out, this entire time, Xerath was trying to break his roots from slavery. And now he had the ambition to gain power himself.
Jesus, now that's a character arc. Now that's a fucking character development arc, Jesus.
So he justified these murders by telling himself that he was protecting a friend. Despite his efforts, the queen did give birth to another child.
Oh, no shot.
So Xerath summoned a storm and let lightning kill the queen and the child.
What else do you do, brother? You know, what else do you do? Just call a storm, call the almighty Zeus, you know, brother. Brother in the sky, yeah, brother in the pantheon. I need some help in here. Quite simple.
Eventually, all these events led to Azir becoming the crowned emperor of Shurima with Xerath by his side.
Okay.
From this point on, Xerath was waiting for Azir to finally get rid of slavery. Which never happened.
No shot, buddy. No shot. Basically free resource. Nah. Why would we give away free resource? No, we're not doing that, brother. We're not doing that.
Despite Azir being the most beloved emperor in history, he allowed slavery to keep going on.
No, this is fine.
That angered Xerath. At the end of the story, the emperor was chosen to become an Ascended himself. But during the ceremony, when the Sun Disk was focusing its power into Azir's body, Xerath was so full of his BS, he incinerated him and forced all the power of the Sun Disk into himself. This resulted in Xerath's body being turned into pure arcane energy, the death of Azir, and the collapse of the Sun Disk and the destruction of the entire Empire.
The question remains, did he end the slavery though? Did he end the slavery? This is the big question.
Wanna know the twist at the end? If you read the story from Azir's perspective, you learn that he did want to remove slavery. He just wanted it to be a surprise. In fact, he even announced it just as Xerath betrayed him. But Xerath already murdered way too many people, so even though he really wanted to stop, it was too late to go back.
No.
So Xerath doomed the entire empire. And yes, because the Emperor died...
But technically, yeah, hear me out, technically if Azir is already saying that, you know, we are removing slavery as he is getting stabbed, well technically these were the last Emperor's words, you know? So Emperor was right. What Emperor said is true, so there is no slavery. Xerath is getting all of that power, he's killing his best friend. That's a win-win-win except for killing the best friend part, you know? It is what it is, top 10 enemy betrayal, yeah it is.
Xerath is also technically the reason why the Darkin exist. I already mumbled about the lore for way too long, so just know this. Nasus's brother, Renekton, bound Xerath in a sarcophagus, and he locked himself with Xerath in a tomb. Many years later, scavengers opened the tomb and released Renekton and Xerath. As I said, Xerath is currently in Nerimazeth, and he is actually trying to rebuild the original Sun Disk. We don't really know why he is doing it, but I think it's safe to assume that he just wants more power.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you already got one power up, yeah, it's like going Super Saiyan. You were a Saiyan, you were basically Xerath. Then you use the Sun Disk, you become Super Saiyan. Now with the second disc, you become Ascended Super Saiyan, or also known as Super Saiyan 2. Quite easy. My boy is on the mission, you know, my boy is on the grinding game.
But you know what it smells like to me? It smells like a big old setup for a future raid.
Yep.
In Legends of Runeterra, you can see Xerath with all his worshippers. You can also see all the mini-bosses around him. Especially we know about Demi Yin, the Unbound. But besides all of these heralds and acolytes, this raid would also have the Bakai, the original experimental Ascended who come from this city. But also, we would fight Renekton himself.
How?
Because it turns out, after hundreds of years of being locked in a tomb with Xerath, Xerath broke his mind by whispering to him that Nasus betrayed him. He purposefully led him to rot in the darkness. That's why Renekton is quite crazy these days.
Oh, I see.
It all goes back to Xerath, who might be the ultimate villain of Shurima. For the next raid, why don't we play off of the success of Arcane?
Arcane Classic.
No spoilers, don't worry. Previously, when I told...
What do you mean no spoilers? Arcane has been out for like, what, 1 year? Give or take, no? Maybe half a year. No, shit. When was Arcane released? It's been a while, bro. If you are still being... If you're still afraid of spoilers right now, bro, it's your own fault. There has been, let's just say there's been plenty of time to see that shit, no?
I told you about the cities Piltover and Zaun. I showed you that at the very bottom of that place you can find the ruins of an ancient Shuriman city.
Yep.
But that will become just a dungeon. The one that would become an interesting raid would be the Empire of Renata Glasg.
Oh.
After I mention this, I know a lot of you will be confused.
Yep.
After all, Renata Glasg is just a rich baron from Zaun. How can she support an entire raid? Well, in this case, it is all built on two factors. First of all, Renata is way too big of a character to be removed in just a dungeon. But more importantly, Renata Glasg released this year, and she was released as yet another big villain, after all the other already established villains in Piltover and Zaun. She simply really feels like a setup for something in the future. Because after already having Singed and Urgot and Victor as villains in Zaun, Riot...
I mean, hold on a second, Victor is not a bad guy, yeah. Lore accurate, Victor is the fucking cute guy who got fucked over by Jace. and Jace's pride. Victor was actually trying to save lives. Victor is the good guy. Like my guy is focusing on the glorious evolution, which is saving lives. In the meantime, Jace got all salty about the crystals and whatnot, and attacked Victor and said, Victor, you bad. Victor is the good guy in this scenario. Jace is the asshole. What do you mean Victor is a bad guy? Nah.
Riot didn't need to make up another. It feels obvious they released Renata to be a villain supervising the other bad guys of Zaun. Before her, Zaun didn't really have a main villain. So obviously she is now filling that role.
Technically a council of villains, you know? You can have a council of villains, like let's take the entire all of the Camp Barons. Jace killed a kid in Arcane. Sometimes happens, you know? Sometimes we call those acceptable casualties, brother, yeah? We call those acceptable casualties.
Her lore is making her the main boss of Zaun. Her raid would be very clear in its structure. We would follow the detective case of Caitlyn and Vi as we try to find her hideout. Perhaps Camille, an extremely dangerous assassin from Piltover, would be also interested in killing her. From that point on, we would literally raid her place with the Wardens. As a nice bonus, people would love to see the popular champions Zeri and Echo on our side, both of which are kids from the streets who have destroyed her warehouses before. But the last puzzle piece is...
I mean, it makes perfect sense, you know? It makes absolute perfect sense. We're grouping up the entire task force to take down the Camp Baron. And then there's a kid tagging along. Hey, I kinda destroyed her warehouse, you know? Mind if I join? Yeah, sure. Feel free to join us, you know?
Why would we raid Renata? Well, the Glasg family owns Glasg Industries, which is the most luxurious brand in Piltover and Zaun. They sell perfumes and really fancy limb replacements. And unfortunately, this brand reflects a bit of real life, since these fancy formulas are developed down in Zaun, using slave labor. But there is also a darker twist.
I don't remember seeing that people want to take down Apple. If we're looking into real world, you know, I don't remember people saying, you know, we need to raid Apple. Apple bad. Even though they sell an amazing product, well, subjectively amazing product, yeah, which is made in China sweatshops by kids. I don't know, brother.
All their products are infused with a chemical formula, which can turn their customers into mindless rampaging husks at any moment. It's kinda like Apple. Now, since Renata is a recent champion, that's all her story really has. She is probably the most powerful Baron in Zaun, who can make an entire city fall into chaos with the press of a button. And now we're just waiting to see when she would unleash it.
Is it just me, or am I seeing Game of Thrones Cersei exploding the entire sept now? The green explosion. Yeah, this is the scene. So basically, I see there's a lot of correlation between Game of Thrones and League of Legends story, you know? Yeah, like my guy said, Ruination is going to be basically the Game of Thrones, so shit. It's good to draw conclusions like that, but it's kinda too obvious in here now, kinda too obvious.
If you ask me, I normally wouldn't think that this would be a great raid. But this would be very different from raiding dragons, which would actually give it the benefit of changing environment. But also remember, this is riding off of Arcane's fame, and I doubt Riot would pass on that opportunity.
No
That's
shot.
why I feel confident we will meet Renata in the MMO. And now we are diving into the top 3 raids.
Zion.
I am extremely confident that some form of these will be in the MMO. That's for 2 reasons. First of all, these big villains are way too big to be ignored. We are talking about characters in the style of Arthas Menethil.
So we're talking about Zion, Swain. Swain has to be one of them. Mordekaiser, like legit number 1 is going to be Mordekaiser.
But also, their lore turns them into world-threatening enemies that have to be dealt with the first of these being Viego, the Ruined King.
Who's chilling
There
right
is
now, yeah.
not a sliver of a doubt we will see the Ruined King in the MMO. You can point a gun to my head, tell me to guess a villain in this MMO, and I will smile knowing that I survived. It would be unimaginable to ignore him.
True.
Now, the issue lying in front of me right now is that Viego's story is massive. On top of the normal story he has in League of Legends, he got his own book that is 400 pages long.
Jesus!
The entire RPG game called Ruined King, which is focusing on his reawakening. And League of Legends got its own in-game event that was focusing on pushing his lore forward.
But straight up, yeah, he is the Lich King. We have Lich King in World of Warcraft, we have Lich King, we have the Ruined King, who is exactly the same thing. Now think about it, we can create a meme, you know? The corporate wants you to find the difference between the Lich King and Viego, and you're the Ruined King. Shit, they're the same thing.
Which also included 3 cinematics. Right now, Viego has the most lore out of any champion in this universe. So let me summarize it as quickly as possible. Viego was a Camavoran prince who was forced into becoming the king at an early age. Because of this, he was not ready to become a king, and many would not consider him a really good king. Still being a teenager, he often threw tantrums in the style of Kylo Ren. To keep the kingdom from crumbling, he relied on his 2 advisors, Callista and Nuno Necrit of Camavor. Yes?
What? Hold on. I know Callista, yeah, we know Callista, yeah. Also, yeah, Camavor, yeah. Also, this area we had the map, yeah. We had the map of of our universe. We had the map of Runeterra, and then we had extra zones from where the Ruined King is from, yeah, from the Camavor. So extra races, extra classes can come from this place, you know. Also, we can have extra professions if there will be professions. I hope so, because MMOs have it. Isn't this Europe? Hold up. Wait a minute. Shit, it is Europe! Swear to God! Swear to God, it is Europe! Look at that, bro. We have this area, yeah? We have this area, yeah? We have Norway, we have Sweden, we have Finland. And then we have, boom, we have Camavor. Riot, original as always, I like it.
To keep the kingdom from crumbling, he relied on his 2 advisors, Callista and Nuno Necrit of Camavor.
Nuno. Shit, that was Korean, brother. That was straight up, that was Korean.
Yes, that's the character named after me. Eventually, Viego met the love of his life, Isolde. A woman whom he loved very, 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 very deeply. He loved her so much that he would do anything for her.
He did.
But she didn't abuse it. Isolde was actually a very good queen. For the majority of Viego's ruling, he waved the kingdom's problems away just so he could be with Isolde.
Simp. Anyway.
Until the day someone tried to poison Viego to finally remove him from the throne, and instead they poisoned Isolde. This is where Viego's dark side really started to show. After trying absolutely everything imaginable, nobody was able to heal his queen. And Viego's angry depression started taking over him.
He should just taken her to Singed, you know? Singed wouldn't have this problem. Straight up, you know, it is what it is. Singed would solve this problem easily.
After weeks of desperate searching, Viego found out that there may exist a hidden place called the Blessed Isles, which held the sacred blessed waters which could heal anything. And so he sent Callista away to find the Isles. After a long adventure, Callista succeeded and she confirmed that the Blessed Waters did indeed exist.
Nice.
So on the next trip, Callista brought the Queen and the King and their soldiers with them, so that they could all heal the Queen and be happy ever after. But of course, there was a dark twist. The Queen died before they arrived on the Isles. And the priests confirmed that they can heal anything, as long as the person is alive. But that didn't stop Viego from trying. So after the priests denied him entrance to the waters, Viego massacred everyone who stood in his way, and following a creepy warden called Thresh, he arrived at the waters and dunked the queen in. For a moment, the waters did resurrect the queen. But then she was turned into a wraith, who killed Viego with his own blade, which caused his soul to be absorbed by the blade. I'm skipping a lot of details here, so just know that yes, the blade can absorb souls.
That's Frostmourne from Wrath of the Lich King. That's the same blade. That's the same. Like, swear to God, the only difference between Viego and the Lich King is that Lich King didn't fucking simp. That's what makes him a great king.
We'll actually talk about the blade in the next MMO video, whenever that one comes out. Anyway, after Viego was killed with his own blade, everything exploded in necromantic magic. His queen's soul was shattered into fragments, and the entire place was turned into the Shadow Isles. For 1,000 years, Viego's soul stayed there in the blade. Until the Pirate King Gangplank was told by Thresh that he could totally pick up the blade. His mind was totally strong enough to resist the power of the king. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. And the moment Gangplank picked up the blade, his mind and body was dominated by Viego, who then used that body to fully release himself back into the world. After that, even though everyone's been dead for 1,000 years, Viego still wanted to bring his wife back. And
Okay, 1,000 years. Maybe Singed wasn't still born. Yeah, maybe there was no Singed. Okay, so yeah, you're kind of fucked as a Viego in that scenario. Gotcha.
so he started to unleash the undead with the Black Mist all around the world, in an attempt to find all the fragments of his queen's soul. Eventually he succeeded, and he actually managed to bring the queen's soul back. But immediately after that, he was defeated by the Sentinels of Light. Remember the undead hunting class from the last video?
Yeah, where Lucian is wielding his PP to kill an enemy. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, we remember that.
That's them. And not only did they permanently destroy the queen's soul, because the queen didn't actually want to be resurrected, but Viego's entire story arc ended with him being teleported back to his homeland called Camavor, where he was banished until the present days. You can actually see the end of the storyline in the cinematic called Absolution. And this is why Viego is going to be an incredible boss in the MMO.
Yep.
He does have a lot of story behind him, but more importantly, this entire time we have only seen his young, reckless personality, where he acts like a child throwing tantrums, as he's constantly trying to help someone he is obsessively in love with. But the thing is, his entire life he was chasing his queen. He was ready to go beyond death just to be with her.
Yeah, now the question is, let's imagine him in the scenario of the raid. His whole motive was to resurrect the queen. Now queen is, he managed to do that, he collected the soul, now the soul got absolutely destroyed. What happens next? What is going to be his goal right now? Pure revenge? Pure vengeance? Is that the angle?
But now he was imprisoned after learning that the queen didn't want to be with him, but also after her soul was permanently destroyed. So once Viego is unleashed from his prison again, instead of a cocky teenager, we are going to have a pissed off king who has nothing to lose. And that transformation into the Dark King is something I really wanna see.
True.
And you can only imagine what the raid is gonna look like. Hordes of risen Camavoran soldiers, ancient undead dragons brought from his homeland, the legendary Rasa the Sunderer, and even more legendary Hecarim of the Iron Order. But there is also Commander Ledros, or maybe Karthus the Death Singer, and finally Thresh, the one who caused all of this to happen, the hidden master of puppets in the shadows. Simply said, Viego has a lot of meaningful enemies serving him.
I don't see how Thresh is staying in there. He's the puppet master. Yeah, he's the manipulator. He's playing the 5D chess. I don't think a 5D chess player like Thresh is going to end up in the raid. He's going to be maybe hinted as a character. But we will not see him because he'll be doing some shenanigans in the background, you know, in the shadows.
And the raid will be glorious.
Spoiler alert, in Nyla's story it was said that the magic holding Viego is getting weaker and he can be freed again. There we go, we have a raid, and we have a raid in there, you know? Thresh is in Noxus anyway. Yeah, Thresh is playing 5D chess, I'm telling you bro, he's just chilling.
Side note, in the distant future, I kinda wanna cover the entire story of Viego. Wish me luck. For the next
That's going to be like a 12-hour video. If not longer, yeah. Chat will be watching that, yeah. In the future we'll be watching that, easy.
raid, we are not delving too far away from the undead theme.
Shadow Isles?
Because it's time to cover the most brutal badass warrior this universe had ever seen.
Brazil.
Super quickly, just for clarity. Viego's deathly magic is really undeath in its true meaning. When he's turning his enemies into undead souls, it's more like he is preventing them from dying, and he's turning them into somewhat living wraiths instead. So he's not really the master of death. As you'll see, that title goes to Mordekaiser. His story begins as a warlord known as Sun Uzal. During his time, the main continents were occupied by barbaric tribes. Sun Uzal believed that by killing as many people as possible, he would please the gods of the afterlife. And so, he forged an empire in blood and death.
Fucking Giga Chat, bro. Straight up Giga Chat. Imagine, the one thing is thinking that. The other thing is actually doing it. Yeah, you can be a fucking crazy person and say, yeah, maybe it's a bit of a crazy idea, you know, and then let's fucking do it, you know?
As his life was near the end, he took great satisfaction in knowing that he would sit at the god's tables, in the glorious halls of bones. However, when he died, he found no glory waiting for him. Instead, Sun Uzal stood in an empty grey wasteland.
Fucking scammed. Brazil got scammed, it is what it is.
With an occasional soul drifting by. He watched as these lesser spirits faded into the fog, unmade and lost in time. But Sun Uzal refused to fade. His will, tempered by rage and torment, held him together. In other words, he was simply too angry to die. He started listening to the disembodied whispers around him, and he learned this was Oknun, the language of the dead. Slowly, he came up with a plan. He began whispering temptations into the veil between realms, promising power to any who would listen. And sure enough, he managed to tempt a few cultists into bringing him back to life. Lacking any flesh or bone, he told the cultists to bind his spirit to metal plates, forged in the likeliness of his old armor. And so he rose as the Revenant of Iron and Hate.
So basically there's nothing behind the plates, it's just a spirit, yeah? And that's the spirit is gone. That's just air in there. So in the last video, yeah, we'll learn that William is a lie. Brazil is also a lie. If you remove the armor, what happens then?
No longer called Sun Uzal, but rather, in Oknun, he was Mordekaiser. Originally, these cultists wanted to use Mordekaiser as a weapon in their trivial wars. But instead, Mordekaiser killed them all, and he used their souls to forge himself a brutal mace called Nightfall. With that, Mordekaiser's second conquest of the world started. But this time, he was wielding necromantic magic. All his enemies were confused because it seemed like Mordekaiser only cared about massacre and destruction. Entire generations perished under his campaign. But in reality, there was far more to Mordekaiser's real plan. At the center of his empire, he raised the Immortal Bastion, which became the largest structure on Runeterra. And he used that place to gather information about spirits and death, be it by capturing and studying demons, or torturing Yordles until he could harvest their secrets. He did everything in his...
I mean, Yordles deserve that, yeah. Especially Veigar. Hashtag deserved. Would love to see if he would torture Teemo, yeah.
Power to understand the realms beyond. Eventually, Mordekaiser became such a tyrant, the entire continent banded against him. But when he was ultimately defeated, it was not because of his enemies, but rather he was betrayed from his inner circle.
Classic. I mean, there's a saying that betrayal will never come from your enemies. It always comes from your friends. Like, it literally betrayal cannot come from your enemies. So yeah, Sag. Basically the Julius Caesar in League of Legends. So Sag.
The Immortal Bastion had a secret cabal led by a witch we know as LeBlanc. They managed to separate Mordekaiser's spirit from his armor and seal the empty armor in a hidden place.
Why seal it? Just destroy it now? Just straight up destroy it.
As a result, without his physical vessel, Mordekaiser was forced out of the physical realm. What none of the cultists knew, however, is that all of this was according to Mordekaiser's plan. The entire time he was forging a destiny greater than the halls of bones. When he finally returned to the empty wasteland of the afterlife,
Again,
he was met by the hundreds of thousands who died under his reign.
so basically he was so afraid of to be alone in the afterlife. He said, brother, I'm not going in there alone. You, and you are coming with me. And he started bonking. That's what he did.
Prevented by his dark magic, they would never fade. They would be his eternal army bound to his will. But even the weakest of the spirits were given purpose. Just like he used the souls of the cultists to forge his maze, the weakest of the souls would become the building blocks of his afterworld.
Motherfucker killed so many people that he started playing Minecraft with their souls. If that's not a Chad move, I don't know what is. Straight up Brazil the Chad.
And so Mordekaiser became the king of the afterlife. And even though he was cast out, with his physical vessel being banished in the Immortal Bastion in Noxus, he is already planning on how to return. And once he does so, after so many people were fed into his realm,
I mean, the question is, does he specifically need to return to the same armor? Or he can whisper to new people on the other regions where they don't know about Mordekaiser and say, hey, I give you power, everything Gucci. You just craft a bit of armor, yeah? Here are the schematics. You may have seen this armor somewhere in the newspaper. That's an evil guy. Nah, that's definitely not me. That was my brother. Who won? Not me. That was my brother. Anyway, craft me an armor like that, and then, we'll be friends. Or does he specifically need to return to the exact same armor? That is the question.
he would be so powerful nobody would know how to stop him. Since that is where his story cut off, you know that this is a setup for the future.
Yep.
Even in League of Legends, sometimes Mordekaiser is joked about as a raid boss. Once he starts rolling, you need the entire team to get him down. And Riot would be foolish not to use him as a badass raid boss in the MMO. Especially since we already know some of the other characters that we would see in his raid. When Mordekaiser was conquering the world the second time, he had two demons which he used as his companions.
Okay.
These would be Tybolk, the giant fire demon, and Atakan, an iron-bound shadow demon. To get to him, we would probably have to get past the one who banished him, LeBlanc, and I wouldn't be surprised if we also met Viego, the Yordle Mordekaiser tormented to get his Yordly secrets.
Question is, if Mordekaiser is still in the Shadow Realm, if he is still in the Underworld, why is he a threat? Because in this scenario, I imagine LeBlanc is still guarding his armor, is still guarding his spirit away from the armor from coming back to reality. So why would we go in and try to kill his spirit if he's not back? I wonder how the story will go. I imagine LeBlanc should be our ally, and Viego should be our ally in this scenario. Viego, well, for obvious reasons, he got fucking tortured by the guy. LeBlanc, well, she was basically guarding that guy. We have the same story in World of Warcraft: The Burning Crusade. We have Illidan and Maiev. So you know, the hunter and the hunted.
Finally, we would likely fight alongside Swain, one of the leaders of Noxus who is actively trying to root out the dark magics from Noxus. So yeah, maybe Mordekaiser's story is not as long as Viego's, but Mordekaiser is built on brutal conquest. His story is simply badass.
Yep.
And you bet that's what people want to fight. And this takes us to the last raid I want to show you. Not only is this raid inevitable, but it is going to be the final raid before Riot starts to get sweaty about their future.
Okay, chat, what are the options? What are the options? Okay, I'm alive, yeah, I'm alive. What are the options for this trade? Last trade before Riot gets ready. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Noxus? No. Volibear? Lissandra? Oh, the Watchers. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the North.
Because from
Freljord.
that point on, they would be forced into making up new enemies. And that's usually when the lore of MMOs crumbles. With the ultimate endgame in Runeterra being the battle against the end of everything.
Watchers,
the Watchers of the Void. Now, I know we already quickly summarized the story of the Watchers when we talked about the world. But we need to quickly do it again because if they get their own raid, it would be a really cool merging of multiple storylines of this universe. Basically, at the beginning of everything, there was nothing.
Classic.
Just dark, empty void. Until there was a spark of light. This spark of light illuminated the darkness and revealed creepy entities we know as the Watchers, who before this event didn't even know about their own existence. Of course, since this first light woke the Watchers.
My guys were just sleeping, bro. They were just being chilling, you know? They were just sleeping, enjoying the weekend. And then someone is fucking shining the light into them. Question is, where did the light come from?
Up for the first time since the beginning of time. The Watchers got annoyed and they decided to silence it so they could sleep again. As they drifted closer, we learned that this spark was indeed our reality. So to get rid of the light, the Watchers tried to poke it and taint it. But they were always too big to get through and deal with it themselves. So instead, they reached into reality, stole something, corrupted it, and released it back.
What?
In hopes that it would destroy the rest of the reality.
Makes
but
sense,
even
yeah.
that wasn't too successful.
Sage.
Eventually, the Watchers started whispering into the light. And the Ice Witch known as Lissandra answered. The Watchers promised her people immortality and great power. In exchange, they asked Lissandra to prepare her world for the coming of the Void. In secret, behind the backs of her two sisters, she agreed. The Watchers empowered the strongest of their followers and turned them into the Iceborn. And soon enough, the Watchers broke into reality in the Freljord. With it, Lissandra's allegiance with the Watchers was undeniable. But as the Watchers rose, for the first time, Lissandra got to see how horrifying they were. And she realized they came here to destroy everything. In desperation, Lissandra sacrificed her sisters and the Iceborn to use their magic to freeze the Watchers beneath the ice. But even that magic wasn't enough. Beneath the ice, the Watchers were only sleeping. They would break out should they try to wake up. So these days, Lissandra is kidnapping the surviving Iceborn. She freezes them in her fortress. She is then using their inherent powers to reinforce the ice. And she is feeding their dreams to the Watchers to keep them asleep. As a bonus, Lissandra is killing anyone who remembers the old days. And who could spill out that she actually kinda betrayed all humanity.
Like, jeez, now to think about it, bro, at the end, dude, it's a fucking extremely long story here, bro. And it's only Lissandra, bro. It's only lore of Lissandra and the North, like, Jesus. And now think of all the 160 champions that we have in League of Legends. I don't think they're stopping at 162. They're gonna release a couple of more champions, yeah. Also, I've heard Riot said that they're going to be stopping at a certain amount of champs, so God knows what will happen then. But bro, that's only one champ's lore, yeah? The lore of a single champ. Jesus, it's fucking huge. And put that all in the single world. Meanwhile, Shaco have no lore, what do you mean? Shaco Clown, that's it. He's sneak.
See, this setup on its own is enough to support a raid. Let's say we raid the Frostguard Citadel, which is where Lissandra is keeping the Watchers frozen. First, we get there by crossing the Howling Abyss.
The ARAM Classic. Now the question is, why would we raid that? Why would we raid that? If we are raiding, which means we are hurting Lissandra. If we are hurting Lissandra, there is nothing holding the Watchers, unless our end goal, unless for some God knows what reason, we think that we can defeat the Watchers and remove this threat. We go to Lissandra, tell her, you know, yo, what's up? We're kinda strong enough to remove the Watchers, please step aside. Lissandra says fuck off, then we kill Lissandra, then we kill the Watchers, unless that's the angle.
This is the bridge that is incredibly iconic for League of Legends players.
Yep.
This is where you play ARAM. I bet you never noticed that at the end of the bridge, you can actually see the entrance to the Frostguard Citadel. And in fact, the ghastly shopkeeper is one of the soldiers who remembers the coming of the Watchers. After getting inside, we would fight Lyssandra's frozen thralls. These are trolls that Lysandra twisted herself to serve her. But they are also supported by the Harbinger of Thralls, whatever that is. Then we would fight through Lysandra's army of the Draklorn. These warriors dedicated their lives to Lysandra, knowing that they are protecting the world from the end of everything. Next we would face the most mysterious creatures of the Freljord. We don't really know what they looked like in their pure form. We only know what they look like after they were corrupted by the Watchers.
Okay.
And these would be the creatures with their very interesting names. There is She Who Wanders, They Who Endure, and It That Stares. Whatever these creatures used to be, now they are titanic, with their eye-beam disintegrating reality.
Bit of a Titan-esque shenanigans here, a bit of an old god Titan-esque ideas of just... Fuck, for Lovecraftian, yeah, I think it was a bit of a sense of Lovecraftian horror in here. Like, these guys shouldn't exist yet with a bit of a shenanigans, they do exist, and now best of luck dealing with them.
Then of course we would have to get past Lysandra herself before we arrive at the Frozen Watcher. I think it's likely that we are going to fight one of these. And what's cool is that even though this is the toughest enemy this universe has to offer, even if we defeat it, we don't really defeat all the Watchers. That's the clever backdoor of this universe. We can't destroy them all. They are the primal force, there is an endless sea of them. If anything, our reality is a parasite in their void. So if we defeat a Frozen Watcher, all we really do is plug a hole. But the Watchers continue being a threat. Anyway, this Watcher looks strange, doesn't it? It's not really the floating eye that you would imagine. Well, that's because, as it is with all the League of Legends stories, there is a twist. You see, just as the Watchers are able to corrupt a being, they are also open to being corrupted themselves. The process always comes from both sides. And so, the more the Watchers interact with humans, for example, the more human-like they become themselves. And since the Watchers in the Freljord were frozen there for thousands of years, Legends of Runeterra shows us that once they would break through, that's what they would look like. They would have many human-like limbs, the story told us they have fur from all the animals, and they even have a creepy fake face. So...
Holy shit, that's so bad, I didn't even see the face in there. Chat, has anyone of you seen the face in there? So I thought that was the only eye, that's it, we're chilling in here. Also, we have to consider the fact that we're looking into Freljord. Freljord is a Norse, as in the North. North is inspired by the Norse mythology. In Norse mythology, we have the spirit of the forest. Brother, there was a goddamn movie. I think it's, yeah, I saw the movie on Netflix, The Ritual, where they also showed a god of the forest, which is also sneaky like that, where there's a sneaky face in there. Jesus, now that's what it reminds me. Now I remember, yeah. Not bad, Riot.
Oh no, this is not what a pure Watcher would look like.
Nope.
This is a Watcher tainted by the people of the Freljord. Also, you might be wondering, how do we actually beat the most powerful being in this universe?
You don't.
Well, that's where the stories collide. First of all, Lysandra would be the key to freezing the Watchers. She would have to be on our side at the end there. Also, the primal god Ornn constructed the bridge leading to the Citadel. And this bridge was used as a magical seal to help keep the Watchers down there. So Ornn himself would help us. But most importantly, there is another massive storyline that is in Shurima, centered around a Voidborn known as Belveth. Because this video is already way too long, just super quickly. You know how—
What do you mean way too long? It's just getting better and better. What are you on about?
The Watchers themselves got tainted when interacting with reality. Down in Shurima, a small pocket dimension formed between the Void and our reality. It was sort of like a cancer growth on the Void. In fact, if you dive deeper into this, you may realize that this is directly correlating to real-life cancer. If you don't know, cancer is just living tissue that decided, hey, I don't wanna die. And that's exactly what happened here. As the void started consuming people in Shurima, it got tainted by the people and it formed self-awareness. Soon, because this cancerous growth inside the void needed to represent itself, it grew a creature known as Belveth. A voidborn that looks a bit fishy because she consumed a harbor, but also she doesn't actually like the Watchers because the Watchers want to end everything. And all Belveth wants to do is to live. And so these days, Belveth is consuming entire cities at a time. And she is rebuilding everything with the information she got. With her ultimate end goal being to rebuild all reality. So that she could be reality and she would be strong enough to fight the Watchers.
Imagine that on the one hand we have a certain depth with the Watchers. On the other hand, we have fucking Void, which is also no bueno. And we have to choose one with... Oh my god. Bro, the storyline just keeps getting better and better.
Of course, at this time, she doesn't really have all the information gathered. So whenever she's recrafting cities and people, it all looks uncanny. However, at this point, she consumed hundreds of thousands of people. And she's using all of their brain power, so Belveth is very smart. Now, the reason why this storyline is important is because Belveth once talked to Kaisa, and she offered her a deal. If mortals help Belveth consume reality faster, she would spare them to be the last she would consume. Belveth said that she did the calculations and she knows that humanity could never beat her. But at least, with this deal, she gave them the chance to create a weapon or maybe find a hero who maybe could slay her. She knows they could never achieve it, but she is willing to give them the chance. And you see, this is where we can get another twist. This wasn't confirmed, this is purely my theory, but I believe that there is a way to destroy Belveth. See, Belveth believes that we can't beat her, but the fact is, she used hundreds of thousands of human brains to figure it out. But the humans can't even comprehend the power of the Celestials. So I believe Aurelian Soul could destroy her. She just doesn't have the brain power to figure that out herself.
So then we go to Aurelian Soul, we see brother, we free you, because he is enslaved with that crown. So we go back to him, we tell him, brother, there's Belveth, we need to take care of that. That's assuming we've already taken care of the Watchers. Then our next problem is Belveth. We go to Soul, we say, help us out, we take care of Belveth. And then our end of the deal is like, maybe we're freeing Aurelian Soul. And after millennia, Soul is free and he says, you know what, fuck all of you. Just because you kept me as a slave, I will kill every single one of you. Then we have to deal with the Aurelian Soul. So the story just keeps growing and growing and growing, I see. And then and in order to deal with Aurelian Soul, we're gonna need the mightiest champions of them all. So then we go to op.gg, we see the win rate, we see the stats, and we pick Tima. And with Tima, we kill Aurelian Soul. Easy. That's the story, bro. That's the story.
So what I think is going to happen is that at some point we are going to beat Belveth. She realizes she was wrong, she realizes that humanity is stronger than her when fighting the Watchers, and she decides to help us destroy them. So should we ever get a raid on the Frostguard Citadel, I wouldn't be surprised if before that we got another raid where we delve into Belveth's little pocket dimension, and with her help we move to the north. Or, you know, we just destroy her, that would be way cooler. So all of that is still just a wild theory. The fact is, we are fighting the Watchers. That is inevitable.
Yeah, it's only a question of time, bro.
And that was all the raids I wanted to show you.
Jesus.
All of them are supported by the lore, and it is up to Riot whether they want to do them or not. Except the last 3 raids. Those are happening, there is no way around it.
Yep.
But because people are going to freak out, let me give you some honorable mentions. This universe also technically has the Grim Reaper. While they may have many forms, the most well-known form of death itself is
Tima. I know it, you know it, everyone knows it. Yeah, it's Tima. A fed Tima. If you see a fat Teemo, we saw a picture. I think it is this video, maybe previous video. A super fat Giga Chat Teemo. That shit is scary.
Is Kindred. We wouldn't really have a good reason to fight them though, since death isn't really an evil entity in this universe, but, you know, they exist. I would also love to fight against Vladimir's Hemomancers. We could also get a raid on the Ursine, with Volibear being the final boss, the primal god of wilderness. In the east there is also the mysterious demon known as Ashlash, a seven-handed liquidy demon that is locked beneath the earth, in a place known as the Seventh Layer. Neela is currently wielding its power, and it looks like a setup for the future. Also, there is Fiddlesticks, the primal and most powerful demon on Runeterra. Fiddlesticks itself is just a puppet. The demon is what you can see inside the cage. But because
It's a cage? It's a fucking cage, bro! Holy shit, the more you know, eh? I thought it was just his armor, his chest. Holy shit, bro.
Because Fiddlesticks is roaming around the world, I couldn't really figure out a raid setting. But you bet we are fighting him at some point. If you want a creepy video to react to, find Fiddlesticks Cinematic. Simply said, the lore supports so much more than what I showed you today.
True.
And in the future, I can make a smaller video where I cover the dungeons of this MMO. All being theoretical, of course.
Dungeons? See, the thing is, when it comes down to MMORPGs, we have a progression, yeah? We have world bosses, we have basic quest mobs, then we go higher, yeah? Let's look at it as a pyramid, yeah? At the very bottom, we have the basic mobs, they don't give shit. Then we have a bit of a quest mobs, elites, yeah? We call those elites. Then we have dungeons, yeah? We're still following the pyramid, yeah? And at the very top, we have the lesser amount, we have the raids. So which means we have the least raids, slightly bigger number of dungeons, and a bit of elites, and then a bit of quest mobs, yeah? In the same pyramid. So I imagine we're gonna have a bit more dungeons than 7, yeah? Because it was the number of raids that we just checked.
But for now, that's it.
Holy shit.
I'm running out of content, so let's see, what do we have next?
But here's my question: why do you hold the lav mic?
Wait, what do you...
He's holding the mic, bro. It's all good.